Did the US sabotage Canada's only homemade interceptor? Now, Canada doesn't talk about the Avro Arrow because it's nostalgic. It talks about the Arrow because it's unfinished business. Every time Ottawa finds itself boxed in on defense procurement, every time NORAD tries to remind Canada who it thinks it really owns North American air power, the Arrow reappears. It doesn't show up as an engineering debate or a budget line. It shows up as a question of sovereignty. Who decides what flies over Canada, who maintains it, who upgrades it, and who gets the final say when politics intrudes on defense? Right now, that question is back on the table. Canada is reviewing whether to proceed with the full purchase of 88 F-35s, having paid for only the first 16. Alternatives are being openly discussed. Saab's Gripen is back in the conversation. France's Rafale lurks on the margins, and hovering above it all is an unmistakable warning from Washington, D.C. If Canada walks away from the F-35, the United States will fill the gaps, even if that means American fighters flying more often in Canadian airspace, and eventually changes to NORAD itself. Hey friends, Wes O'Donnell here, an American who lives so close to Canada I may as well be Canadian. And that kind of pressure has a way of waking old ghosts. The Avro Arrow is the loudest one. To understand why the Arrow still matters, you have to strip away the mythology and look at what it actually was. In the early 1950s, Canada faced a strategic reality that's easy to forget today. The shortest route for Soviet bombers carrying nuclear weapons to reach American cities ran straight over the Canadian Arctic. I would argue it still does today. But Canada was not just a junior partner in continental defense. It was the forward line, much like Ukraine or the Baltics are today. The Royal Canadian Air Force initially tried to stretch the life of the CF-105 Canuck, a solid but subsonic interceptor. Now, that effort ran into physics. You could only ask so much from an airframe designed for an earlier threat environment. By 1953, the RCAF issued Specification Air 7-3, a document that reads like something written by a country that took its own defense very seriously. The new interceptor needed to reach Mach 1.5 at 50,000 feet within minutes of takeoff. It needed long range, rapid turnaround, and the ability to operate from relatively short runways scattered across a vast, cold country. Man, that sounds a lot like the Gripen today, or the Draken even earlier. Anyways, the RCAF surveyed American, British, and French designs and concluded that nothing on offer met the requirement, so Canada decided to build its own. That decision alone placed Canada in rare company. Designing a frontline interceptor from scratch is something only a handful of nations have ever done successfully. It requires industrial depth, political will, and a tolerance for risk that democracies often struggle to maintain. Avro Canada took on the challenge. The CF-105 Arrow was the result. Now, the Arrow was not ahead of its time in the lazy way that phrase often gets thrown around. It was simply advanced. Full stop. The aircraft featured a large delta wing optimized for high-speed, high-altitude flight. It was designed for a two-person crew, integrated advanced avionics for its era, and was intended to carry sophisticated radar-guided weapons. Avro engineers pioneered early fly-by-wire concepts, integrated computerized navigation systems, and worked with materials and manufacturing techniques that pushed Canada's industrial base to its limits. Some of these Arrow engineers would go on to work for NASA. Now, the Arrow was so ambitious that Canada didn't even have the facilities to test all aspects of it domestically. Avro relied on American test ranges and research infrastructure, including NASA facilities in the United States. Now, that dependence would later feed conspiracy theories, but at the time, it was simply practical reality. Canada did not yet have the wind tunnels, material labs, high-altitude test ranges, or engine test infrastructure needed to validate an aircraft operating at the very edge of what mid-1950s aerodynamics and metallurgy would allow. Avro engineers leaned on American facilities and suppliers because that's where the tools were. U.S. test centers had already been built for exactly this kind of work, and American firms dominated key subsystems from interim engines to avionics components. Now, none of that implied sabotage or covert pressure in the moment. It meant that Canada was trying to build a world-class interceptor inside of a North American aerospace ecosystem that was already deeply integrated, asymmetric, and tilted south. So what happened? Well, they built the Arrow. It rolled out publicly in October of 1957, on the same day the Soviet Union launched Sputnik. History has a sense of irony after all. The aircraft flew in March 1958. It went supersonic early in its test program. Problems existed, as they always do in developmental aircraft, but nothing catastrophic. By early 1959, several prototypes were flying, and production standard Mark II aircraft with the Canadian-designed Orinda Iroquois engines were nearing readiness. Canada was, briefly, on the cusp of fielding one of the most advanced interceptors in the world. It flew 66 flights, totaling just over 70 flight hours. Then it stopped. On February 20th, 1959, Prime Minister John Diefenbaker's government canceled the Arrow and the Iroquois engine program. That date is still known as Black Friday in Canadian aerospace circles. Not to be confused with the Black Friday corporate retail fest where we convince ourselves in the States that we need another 70-inch LCD TV. The reasons were not mysterious, even if they remain controversial. The Arrow was expensive. Canada was also being asked to invest in missile defense systems and to integrate more deeply in NORAD, which had just been formalized with the United States. At the same time, strategic thinking in Washington was shifting toward intercontinental ballistic missiles as the dominant threat, reducing the perceived value of manned interceptors in some circles. Canada could not afford everything. The Diefenbaker government chose a path that favored missiles, alliance integration with the U.S., and cost control over domestic aerospace ambition. That decision alone would have been painful but survivable. What followed was something else entirely. After canceling the Arrow, the government ordered the destruction of the prototypes, the destruction of the tooling, and a vast amount of program material. Airframes were chopped up, blueprints were burned and destroyed. The program was erased with a thoroughness that shocked even those people who supported the cancellation. This is the moment where the Arrow stopped being just an aircraft and became a national trauma. Governments cancel defense programs all the time, but they don't usually take a torch to them in public. The destruction denied engineers, historians, and the public any chance to process the decision rationally. It also fueled suspicion. When you destroy something that aggressively, people assume you're hiding something. Thousands of skilled workers lost their jobs overnight. Many left Canada entirely. A significant number went on to work in the United States, including NASA programs. Now, Canada didn't just lose a jet. It lost a generation of aerospace momentum, and it lost confidence, temporarily. And yet, to this day, some Canadians still ask me, Wes, did the United States sabotage the Arrow? That's the question that never dies, and it deserves a sober answer. There is no credible evidence that the US covertly sabotaged the Arrow program. They might have. I'm just saying I haven't seen a smoking gun, documents, no declassified memos ordering its destruction, no operational footprint that holds up under scrutiny. The Arrow didn't need to be sabotaged. It was politically vulnerable all on its own. That does not mean the United States was indifferent. Washington benefited enormously from the Arrow's cancellation. Canada became more dependent on American aircraft, American weapons, and American sustainment pipelines. NORAD became more asymmetrical. The industrial and strategic leverage shifted south. That's not sabotage, that's just Cold War geopolitics. So my point is the US didn't have to destroy the Arrow. Canada did that itself, under pressure that was very real, but not coercive in the cinematic sense. Middle powers often make these choices, but they rarely like the long-term consequences. Some say the Arrow still exists, perhaps spirited away by MI6 to a remote base in Scotland. Look, I get it. The rumors about a surviving Arrow are emotionally understandable. They offer a way out. If the Arrow wasn't truly destroyed, then the decision feels less final. There is evidence that some documents and components survived. Engineers hid blueprints, parts surfaced decades later. That's human behavior in the face of bureaucratic destruction. But the idea of a complete Arrow airframe surviving in secret for decades collapses under its own weight. Aircraft leave trails, maintenance records, photographs, eyewitnesses, logistics chains. None of that has surfaced in a way that stands up to scrutiny. But make no mistake, the Arrow still matters in 2026, and Canadians should be proud of it. If the Arrow were just an old jet, it would be a museum piece. Instead, it keeps coming back because Canada never replaced what it lost. France did. Sweden did. France chose to preserve an independent combat aircraft capability through programs like Mirage, Rafale, and now its future FCAS ambitions. Sweden evolved its Gripen line through the Draken, accepting trade-offs, but retaining control. Canada walked away from that path in 1959 and never returned. And every fighter since has been imported. Every decision has involved trade-offs between capability, cost, and political alignment. And that's why the current F-35 debate in Canada feels different. It's not just about whether the jet is good, it's about whether Canada is comfortable with that level of dependence on the United States. The F-35 is not just an aircraft, it is a system of systems. Software updates, mission data files, sustainment logistics, and upgrade pathways are all tightly controlled within an American-led ecosystem. That's fine when the politics align. It's catastrophic when they don't. The Arrow was not perfect. It was expensive, it might have struggled to survive budget realities even if it hadn't been canceled. It existed in a strategic environment that was changing rapidly. But its cancellation locked Canada into a permanent position as a customer, rather than a designer, in the highest tier of military aviation. Every time Canada debates whether it can say no to Washington, the answer is shaped by what Canada can and cannot build on its own. Sovereignty, it turns out, isn't just flags and borders. It's industrial capability, supply chains, and the ability to absorb political friction without losing operational control. Canada gave that up in 1959. The Arrow wasn't stolen, it wasn't smuggled away in the night, it wasn't quietly dismantled by American agents. It was surrendered, cleanly and decisively, by a government that chose the path of least resistance and paid a price it didn't fully understand at the time. That price is still being paid, one procurement cycle at a time. And that's why every time Canada's fighter future becomes a bargaining chip, the Arrow rises from the wreckage and asks the same question it's been asking for 60 years. Who really controls Canada's skies? That's it for today, my friends. If you care about things like honoring alliances and pushing back against authoritarians, prove it by hitting that fancy subscribe button. It helps me push back on Russian disinformation and helps me keep Ukraine's fight top of mind for millions of my monthly viewers. And as always, the true North, strong and free. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.